Yeah, hi and welcome. My name's Liam. I'll switch to English if that's okay with everybody. I do speak German, as you just realized, so afterwards also happy to continue in German, but we do have the hurricane of the browser world also joining on stage, which is Glyn Worrell, our Director of Solutions Engineering. And yes, thank you, Georg. As you just pointed out, we will be talking about browsers. And I don't know about you, but I arrived yesterday in Berlin, sweltering heat. I was really happy to arrive to an air-conditioned hotel room. Unfortunately, it was not a Marriott, but Marriott did approach us a few years ago and came to us with a problem of petty theft. If you think of the Marriott group, almost 800,000 people, right? Petty theft, that means that small things, small items are being stolen, towels. And oftentimes, this happens from external people that work in these hotels that don't really have that much of a relationship with the brand, that don't feel as loyal. For Marriott, that meant damages worth 50 million every year. And the way that they wanted to tackle that was by digitally integrating these people and providing them with a digital workplace. And they had several options to do so, right? They could have given them a fully managed device to have access to applications. They could have given them a virtualized version of that. Or they could have given them something which is also our mission, which is basically reducing the complexity and cost in providing application access and securing such access, right? And that's where we think in today's world. I heard someone this morning already talking to me about E7 licenses. I've heard people talking about a VPN connection that needs to go through a VDI to then use cloud telephony in my call centers. And this is all something where we think that the approach really needs a redesign, a new thinking of how we provide this access and secure it. And it's something I think for most of us here today already, if we think about where do we work primarily, for many of us it is the browser, and it's increasingly so the browser, right? More web applications, more cloud adoption, more extensions that we use in the browser, but in also things like remote hybrid work, working from different devices. And all of this is also something that you will find reflected in analyst report like Gartner, or in other reports that state that up to 85% already happens in the browser. Chrome Enterprise speaks from 63%. For me personally, I would say it's 100% nowadays. And this is an increasing trend, obviously, and I think all of you will find the same forces basically at work. If we think about a redesign, though, we also have to think about what does it look like at the moment, right? And at the moment, for a lot of companies, the browser is really a consumer product. It's built to advertise against us. It's optimized for marketing and analytics. But if we work primarily in the browser, and we have statistics like this, where it's becoming increasingly insecure, exploitable through 0 days, start points for ransomware, and now we're swept on with a wave of agentic workforces, which, are we prepared for this or are we not, right? And at the same time, we are asked to be more productive, and more work is going into the browser. And the way that companies typically try and address the lack of visibility, the lack of protection, and the lack of productivity is through a network-based approach, through tools and layers that exist around the browser, right? Think of your, just as mentioned, the VPNs, the VDIs, your SSEs, to then do DLP, to then do DACH capabilities and functionalities. And we say, why don't we actually reduce these layers, which obviously all add costs, add a bad user experience, latency, and complexity. Why don't we reduce them based on the same Chromium foundation, right? So the same look and feel that you anyway today use as your main workspace, and extend those with enterprise capabilities. And that's what we would call an enterprise browser, right? Applying policies hard-coded directly through the browser. And what happens when you change this one thing of actually having a browser-centric strategy, is that you allow work to be secured at the point of work. So your copy-paste actions, your up and download actions, all of this gets manageable. You reduce a large portion of the complexity that you have, things like VPN or VDI, for example, which obviously also lowers your cost. But you can also enable a better user experience, right? Amazon is another customer of ours. For them, it's very important that if someone uses their social media apps, they can't just post anything. No one can post, Prime Day is not happening this year because, well, I think the reaction would be felt on the stock market. So for them, they've actually adapted natively in the workflow of these applications the capabilities of how these posts can be done through extra layers of security, through taking away functionalities, and thereby allowing also external people to securely work in these applications. Another example that I think of when I think of changing the way that work happens today is Pfizer, a brand I think everyone at least has heard of in this room, right? Pharma industry, very long history of IT usage, legacy applications that are secured through username and password. Oftentimes shared accounts, right? So even the passwords themselves, simple so they can be shared amongst people. How do we actually elevate the security level? Well, with Island, you can wrap around these applications without needing to change them, and you can interject an authentication flow to prompt for multi-factor authentication, to redirect to your IDP, and thereby enabling security in an easy way that is understandable for people that are, for example, in a shop floor or in the production environment, so also not always the most tech-savvy users. Pfizer has another example, right? Every year, Pfizer has roughly 10,000 interns, so 5,000 every 6 months, people coming through, needing devices. They need to be re-imaged. They need to be deprovisioned off of these devices and off of the access. And for them, a big lever was to say, hey, why do we need to keep recycling all of these devices, making mistakes, creating security risks? Why don't we give them the ability to bring their own device? We will enable them to do so without losing data on those unmanaged devices. And we can even extend the role-based access for specific applications where our identity tooling is not enough. There are other examples, for example, in retail, where we've worked with Mattress Firm, which is a large furniture retailer in the US, who wanted sales-assisted tablets. So while you are talking to people and selling them a bed, you have a tablet, you can enter information and basically look up to do a better sales job at the end of the day. They had a VDI in place which almost took a minute to load any application. Now that's a long stalling time, so unless you know a lot of jokes, the sales conversation is not great. The user experience is not great. We downed that by a fifth of the time, right? So fast access. On top of that, you can add functionalities and automations for data capture, which was then used by the finance team to faster check certain sales activities. This was rolled out across almost 2,500 stores in less than 2 weeks, right? So speed of deployment, speed of operations is also a core of what you can achieve with Island. If I look at a European example here, and it's Landes & Gier, which is a Swiss company. They do smart metering, which is mandatory in Switzerland, for example. Their IT users are third-party companies that do installations of said smart metering around the country, right? So again, they use mobile devices. They used to reconnect back into Landes & Gier environment through VPN. They had issues updating their applications. All of this changed once they centered the workplace around the browser. And maybe to give you a quick demonstration of what this theory actually can look like, I will ask my colleague the hurricane of browsers, Glyn Worrell, come to the stage.
Cheers. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for bearing with me in English here. You wouldn't understand my German. So what I'll do is I'll take you through a quick demonstration of some of the capabilities that Liam spoke about. But ultimately, this is what you're seeing as the Island browser, right? It's a Chromium-based browser built upon the Chromium Foundation, taking away all of the ads, the trackers, the things that you don't need in the enterprise, and building security in from the offset. The look, the feel, the navigation, the printing is going to be familiar to your end users, so you don't need to educate or train them, all right? Because we've built the browser with the end user in mind, we've put things like enterprise communications in here. So people load the browser as their first application of their workday. So we can put in applications here. Excuse these things popping up. But we put in a notification area. So because people load the browser straight away, you can immediately address maybe business updates, get actionable feedback right from the employees. But also, more importantly, we can personalize the applications that are delivered to these employees. So whether it's individuals, whether it's teams, offices, people in geolocations, you can personalize the workspace. I'm going to take Salesforce as an example here, right? Here you've seen a username and password being injected straight away. But to do that, generally you bolt on tools to the browser to make it more secure. In this case, we've got a fully fledged password manager here. We can add all different types of secure credentials into our password manager, fully supported across all browsers on Windows, Mac, iPad, iOS, so you can take the password with you securely. But once I log into this application, I'm going to switch over to a different part of Salesforce here. And you're going to notice some, if you're familiar with Salesforce, you're going to notice some changes. Over here on the right-hand side, I've blurred the data in this application because I don't want this user seeing this data. This is because we own the presentation layer of the browser. I'm not having to break and inspect the traffic, and when we talk about AI, that's almost impossible to do on the wire now. But as I scroll down here, you'll see some maybe PCI, PII data, maybe it's project codes that I don't want this user to see. Again, I'm just in Salesforce in this case. It could be any CRM tool, any application across the internet, and I can mask data. If my policy allows, I can go in here and reveal it. But the minute I try and copy this data out of the application, it's like, no, I don't want that data to leave. If I just move over to a different part of the application, typically what I've just shown you can be handled with DLP tools, right? You index the data, you update the indexes, but in this case, I've just got names and addresses. And I might say, well, I don't want this data to go from Salesforce application to any thick application. We deny that. I might think about, taking that if I'm going to offboard myself and I'm going to send it to myself as an email in Gmail. I can block that. But what I'm doing next is I'm loading Google Sheets. It's a corporate sanctioned application. I trust this data going here, so I can allow that paste into that application. So now we're using modern boundaries to protect the data as opposed to DLP rules. Just taking it over to a different use case. One financial organization I was working with often blocked access to websites because they couldn't control the data going into the site or coming out of the site. Here's just LinkedIn, right? But you'll notice I've taken the ability to like, comment on these posts. And that's because now I can allow my HR teams to go and hire new staff, look for people looking for jobs, but not spend all their time creating posts. Now let's talk about AI. AI is in everybody's story today. And with Island, we have a full web category and risk-based scoring system. So if I don't want people to get to websites, I can simply bring up block pages. And this is DeepSeek, right? We don't want people going there. If people have, for example, ChatGPT, personal licenses, here I'm allowing the user to go there. But the minute I type sensitive data in this application, you'll see, again, it's redacted. The minute I try and copy a spreadsheet up here, this is just one on my desktop, sorry. You'll see, again, we have the ability to protect where corporate data is going. However, let's say Copilot, or in this case, Claude, is my corporate application. Here you can see I'm logged into this application. I can now upload that data, be analyzed by AI, do what I want. But Island is tenant aware as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in with my personal AI credentials here. And what you're going to notice is, because we're tenant-aware, I'm saying, hey, look, we don't want you to go in there with your personal license. Use the corporate one, and then I can control what data goes into that application. I'll quickly pivot to one other use case, and that is contractors and third-party users. Generally, you ship a laptop to these users, set up VPNs, provide passwords. It's complex and it's expensive. But in this case, I'm saying, hey, Mr. Contractor, download the browser to your device. We'll give you access to all the applications you need to access in a secure way. And this machine's just had a Windows update, so bear with me. But within the browser, I'm able to log into a remote desktop session here, injecting the password, logging in through our fully fledged Zero Trust network, and I'm then able to use Island within the browser. And that means a couple of things. It means that I can protect my data still within the browser, again on third-party contractors. I'm not having to ship passwords. I'm not having to create complex VPNs. It's all managed in the browser. And to wrap it up, what does it look like in the background? Well, we can capture as much granular detail as we want, because again, all the traffic's coming through the Island browser. But one byproduct that we've got of being the browser is we can see where everybody's going and use digital employee experience on these websites. So if I just take out, for example, let's go for Microsoft applications here. What I'm able to do is see who's using it. Maybe we have a different experience. Maybe people in certain countries over VPNs are having bad experiences. So I can then correlate, okay, which users are it? There's not a lot of data here, but I can say, is it people in particular locations? Or pivot to a device perspective to say, okay, which devices are connecting? A user's logged a support ticket, the device is being slow. I can then, just from a browser standpoint, see the metrics around the machine. Were they on a weak Wi-Fi signal? Was the memory particularly hot at that point in time? So all through the browser, we're able to control or get visibility of the applications, control what data comes in and out of those applications, and improve the employee experience. Liam, back to you, sir.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah. So obviously, the way we want to design a digital workplace is a strategic decision for most of us. But I hope we could show that with our platform, you can really also act tactical, right? Not every employee has the same kind of needs that they want around their digital workplace. We're here today in the room at the other end of this hallway, so feel free to come by with your questions, with further inputs. We're happy to share another demo with you with specific use cases as well. My name's Liam. I live in Munich, so also feel free to reach out. And yeah, if there are any questions now, I think we have a few more minutes as well.